Well, we're on the final stretch. I want to thank you for persevering. Thank you for taking the time to make this a priority today. We just have a few more speakers in prayer. This is the portion where we pray for our military. And we have two distinguished men whom I have a great deal of respect for, not only because of the uniform that they wear, but because of the character of their hearts. They love this nation, and they are honored to be here amongst you. So let me introduce both of them. They will come up separately. And so let me begin with Major General Craig Olson. He is a Program Executive Officer for C3I and Networks at Hanscom Air Force Base in Massachusetts. He's responsible for 2,200 personnel and an acquisition budget of $10.9 billion. General Olson was commissioned in 1982 following his graduation from the U.S. Air Force Academy right in our backyard. The general has flown operational aircraft from the F-15 to the F-4. He has tracked some 1,900 flying hours in 20 different aircraft. He will be speaking for the military. And then also we have Chaplain Colonel Kenneth Williams from the Pentagon, who will also pray for the military. Chaplain Kenneth Williams was awarded his PhD in leadership. He's a graduate of the United States Airborne School. In 1989, Chaplain Williams entered the Arkansas Army National Guard as a first lieutenant in the Chaplain Corps. In November of 2014, he began serving as a Pentagon chaplain, overseeing the religious support for over 25,000 personnel. And he recently received a Global War on Terrorism Service Medal. Let's begin with Major General Craig Olson. Please welcome him now.
Wow. I like to start every time I get to speak with something I'm thankful for. And who's warm in here right now? Like warm. I'm really happy about that because we spent the winter in Boston. Did anybody hear about that this year? An epic winter, and we saw all 110 inches of snow. I'm really happy it's over, so I'm thankful for that. I'm very thankful for Dr. Jim and Shirley Dobson, for the heart they have for the nation and for prayer. I'm sure I'm not the only one in here who had God use them to help raise their sons. Raise your hand if you're in that category. So my wife and I are in that category. Thank you for your hearts for the family. John Bornstein, got to know him through the next person I'm going to say thankful for, but I thank you, John, for your heart for ministry. A pastor of a church, a chairman of a task force, a family with many kids, many candles burning on many ends, but God in the middle of it all. It's been a joy to come to know you this year. And Major General Joe Ward, I'm very thankful for. He was speaking here last year. A former neighbor of my wife and I, someone I met with in an accountability group years ago, just to keep each other accountable and to pray together. He told me that he did this last year, and he said, it was awesome. You just got to hear about this. And that led to me being here today. So I'm thankful for that. Finally, though, and mostly, I'm thankful that I'm a redeemed believer in Christ standing here right now. Who else feels like they've been in church all day? You know, this has been one of the most powerful, meaningful church services I've been in my entire life. It's the longest one for sure. But that's what's cool about it. I don't get to go to church this long on Sunday. And I don't get to hear this kind of talent every Sunday sing. The Legacy brothers, with their wonderful ties, look at their ties. It's America on a tie. Their talent, their gifts are phenomenal. You don't hear that every day. I've heard it last night and today. Speakers. I've been with fellow redeemed Christians who happen to be educators, who happen to be businessmen, who happen to be medical professionals, who happen to be public officers. I'm just a Christian who happens to be in the Air Force. So we all have things we do, but we're believers, and we love Christ, and we love this nation. And that's the point of America. We get to be out and about in America as believers in the various places God appoints us. And I'm just gathered with a bunch of those today. So I'm thankful for that. So I'm going to tell you just for a couple minutes of why prayer is so very personally meaningful to me today, and why this nation and its freedom and the military's role in protecting that freedom have come to mean so much to me. First, prayer. I did not go to college. I did not join the military as a Christian. I actually went into the military because I thought flying would be great, and it sounded like fun. I also went in as a very self-sufficient person. I thought if you work hard, study hard, you'll do fine, and that was working great in high school. Did not work very well at the Air Force Academy. That's where I realized I had a very limited intellectual ability. I still carry in this pocket my transcript from the Air Force Academy as Exhibit A in the court of law that you're not a gifted intellect. You have no real academic skills. It's proof right here. But something happened there at the academy. I went to Bible studies because I was free to do that. I was free to go to Bible study. If someone invited me there, I learned about Christ. I was convicted. I was drawn to commit my life to Christ in April of 1979. And I realized that shortly that began the journey of learning to depend on someone besides myself. Let's stop depending on Craig and learn to depend on God. That just started at that point. God has been gracious enough and patient enough to give me countless other opportunities to learn greater dependence on Him. You mentioned a couple of them as you're reading experiences, flying complex aircraft, doing complex nuclear missions. I had no ability to do that. God enabled me to do that. He put me in charge of failing programs worth billions of dollars. I have no ability to do that, no training to do that. God did that. He sent me to Iraq to negotiate foreign military sales deals through an Arabic interpreter. I have no ability to do that. I was not trained to do that. God did all of that. In all those experiences and many more like them, I found myself admitting I couldn't do that and handing it over to God in prayer. But those are the small things. The bigger things is my lovely bride, Dana. Please raise your hand one more time. You know, He gave me an awesome, beautiful wife of now 32 years to teach me that I needed her desperately to complete myself. I needed her to support me in all those things that God was appointing me to in the military. And she has stood by me in every one of those. And in many cases, she's been ignored in those things, but she stood by me. It wasn't enough for her, though. God gave us 4 young men to raise, because that's even more complex than trying to love your wife. And that's why you turn to people like the Dobsons and others for help to do that. But you get on your knees to do that, to raise 4 young men. And I'm going to talk about a couple of them in particular in a couple minutes. God put me in positions in the church, in the Boy Scouts, in sporting activities, all positions to do because He called me to, but I wasn't gifted or able to do. And each of them was more of a chance to depend on Christ. So that's why this picture here, I've been staring at it last night and staring at it in the morning, because what's that man doing? He's on his knees, bowed before God. Has anybody seen, we talked about George Washington today, a painting of him with his horse on his knees, bowed before God? Who has seen that? That is just emblazoned here, a military general on his knees before God, dependent on God. And so God has given me these experiences to drive me further and further before God in position. I mean, early in my walk with God, pray as you're walking around, pray at the dinner table, bow your head, sure. But God put certain messages in my life and speakers in my life that taught me more specific things about prayer. One was at a Promise Keepers convention. A speaker, I think his name was Jack Hayford. He said he had trouble getting up in the morning with a good attitude. Alarm would go off and he'd be mad. I don't want to get up. And he said, well, that's not the right way to approach my day for God. So what am I going to do? I'll tell you what, God's going to, when the alarm goes off, I'm going to roll out of bed and fall on my knees. So the first position of the day is on my knees before God. And he said as soon as he started doing that, his attitude tended to change. I'm before God. He's given me another day to live. I need to live it for him. I'm pretty excited about that. The day I heard that, I started the very next day. Every time the alarm goes off, I'm going to fall on my knees. And I think it's been 20 years I've been doing the same thing. So God gave me that picture. God gave me another now retired Major General. When I was struggling with very difficult jobs that I knew I couldn't do on my own, he went through a time of testing in his life when he lived in Colorado, and God put him prostrate before the Rocky Mountains. And you gentlemen know what they look like. Many of you know what they look like. They humble you because of the Creator, the power of the Creator. So he would get flat on his belly, prostrate before God every day, facing the Rocky Mountains. That was a very powerful picture in my head, in my heart. So I found myself doing that many times a day during a week, closing the door of the office or finding some closet somewhere where I can get that way because I just need to. And I'll stop many times a day to pause in prayer for that next meeting, that next phone call, that next decision. So yes, you can pray like it's breathing, has been said today. But the position of that prayer really matters a lot to me. The pastor who married Dana and I, he gave us a little counseling. And we learned there that you need to finish every day as a husband and wife in prayer. So that started the day we got married. We finished the day and we prayed together. So 32 years of times 365, we finished the days in prayer. Do you have to be together? No. You have phones. You can pray together on the phone. We've done that with 8,000 miles between us from Iraq to Ohio. And it's very hard to go to bed mad at your wife when you're praying. You know what you typically realize? There's something wrong with me that God is fixing in this prayer. There's nothing wrong with her. There's something wrong with me, and God reveals that in prayer. So what a great way to work a relationship. Finish the day in prayer. And then there's 4 young men. Long stories, but there's been years where I felt very distant from them because I was physically and emotionally distant that the calling of the military just has led to, and some of my own decisions of how to use my time. So there are 4 adults right now, age 23 to almost 29, and I'm trying and praying very hard to build what I call an accountable Christian adult relationship with our sons, and praying with them and working issues together like fellow Christian adults. So what do we find ourselves doing once or twice a week? iPhones merged across 4 or 5 different states, talking, sharing, laughing, listening, and finishing with what? Prayer. So from morning till night, in positions like this, that's what prayer means to me. It's continuous and everything has to revolve around it. That's what today has reinforced in an exponential fashion to me. That's why I've enjoyed being in church for 6 hours or whatever it's been right now. I'm just extending it because I love this. All right, so America, why does this country and its freedoms and the role of the military mean so much to me? Like I said, I didn't go to the Air Force Academy. I didn't join the Air Force because I was a patriot. I wanted to fly. It didn't take long to become a patriot, though, because you're surrounded by people, you're taking an oath of office, you're with military bands, you're studying America, you're experiencing America as you go around the world and why it works. You know, it's been said today, but it's been reinforced to me today. You know, how should flawed sinners govern themselves? What's the way to do that? Let's try this experiment called democracy, and let's write a constitution founded on prayer, founded on the Bible. And it's full of things that help Christians succeed in life. Checks and balances, authorities that are spread around, choice, chances to, many opportunities to prevent a nation from departing. It is prevented by the Constitution. if it's properly exercised and founded on a moral compass. That was our nation, a constitution written for flawed sinners with a moral compass of the Bible. So does it work? Has it worked? Yes. How do we keep it working? We get back to that moral compass and we pray. So I've been in many nations, visited many parts of the world, and it's just reinforced to me everywhere I've went how awesome it is to be an American, to be able to pursue your dreams. I've done that. I've done more things than I ever thought I could do or get to do. Our family's been able to do that. 4 young men are now pursuing their dreams as American citizens. They didn't earn any of that. It was a gift by being born in America. Our privilege is to pay that gift forward to the next generation. So I want to tell you 2 quick experiences that really highlighted that and personalized that for me. One was about 10 years ago as a Boy Scout troop, as a Boy Scout leader, going to a VFW post and having a Veterans Day observance, just honoring veterans. And so I'd been to things like that before, but this particular day, God just had a message. So I found myself sitting in the audience looking at veterans from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and the war on terror. Just standing there holding flags in uniform, just being recognized. The message that hit me was they each represent a generation and a conflict where our nation got engaged. And I thought, well, let's do the Jimmy Stewart It's a Wonderful Life thing. Who else has that as a favorite movie? George Bailey, Bedford Falls. What happens to Bedford Falls when you remove George Bailey? It falls apart. So I was having It's a Wonderful Life moment at this Veterans Day ceremony. So bear with me for a second. I was trying to imagine what the world would look like if we did not engage in World War II, if we did not engage in Korea, if we did not engage in Vietnam. What would the geopolitical lines of the world look like? And my heart told me they would look way different than they are right now, and they would be less free. So I said, I will never look at a veteran the same way again. I mean, I appreciated them, I suppose, but now I appreciated them, a veteran. So I don't think it's a trouble here, but if you ever see someone who doesn't appreciate a veteran, let me give you another perspective there. When I was getting ready to deploy to Iraq, March of 2009, BWI Airport, someone stopped me and said, thank you for serving. I said, oh, okay, you're welcome. Who are you? And where are you from? And he told me, I'm a Vietnam vet. And you know what I did? I knew enough about that generation. I had friends from that generation. I said, I bet nobody ever thanked that man when he deployed to Vietnam. They did worse. They despised him. And that too, reinforced to me, may we never be a nation that ever does that again. We're not right now. We appreciate the military. We love it. Let's stay that way. Now, the other experience was even more telling, but in a different way. 9/11, 2009, a memorial remembrance ceremony of the 9/11 event. Where do you think I spent that? It was in Baghdad, Iraq. So that might not seem unusual initially, because you'll do that wherever you are. I just happened to be in Baghdad. But it struck me, because of what I was sent there to do, for military sales to help Iraqis procure military equipment for their nation's defense. Here I was in a country that was still riddled with holes in its buildings and palaces, destroyed by the very same weapons that we're now trying to sell them. And I'm standing here as a national partner and a friend, not many years after we were attacking them as an enemy. And by that point in my time in Iraq, I'd met many Iraqi citizens who wanted to be free. And they told me, I've never known freedom. My parents never know freedom. My grandparents never knew freedom. I'd love to experience it for a day, a week, a year, let alone a generation. And so what do you think that did to my heart? It told me that I've taken this for granted. I've never known anything but freedom. So I take it for granted. It was given to me at birth. I still have it. Maybe I don't realize what a big deal this is. So God showed me that through Iraqi citizens and through general officers in the Iraqi military and people who worked in their defense department who were trying to get freedom in this country. And they knew they needed these weapon systems to help them do that. So I had a whole new perspective about not only what freedom means to our nation, but what it means to another nation and the role of the military in protecting both. So I'm going to encourage prayer for my fellow colonel brother who's going to come prayer. How would I like you to pray for our military? First, please pray for wisdom of military leaders to design strategies to be successful to protecting our nation's freedom. One of those freedoms is this, the freedom to pray, to worship our God. Pray for wisdom to do that. We have to do that these days with very limited resources in a very complex world, and it's very difficult. Those leaders need your wisdom. They need to humbly depend on Christ themselves. They need wise counsel. Please pray for them. Pray for our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, civilians who are deployed. There's still many. They've been doing this for 20 to 30 years if you go back to Desert Shield and Desert Storm. We've been continually engaged at war. This has been very weary on families, been weary on marriages, tough on raising kids, at risk of your life, over and over and over again. I went to Iraq one time, but I met people there for their 6th time, 7th time. What that does to a family, it's very difficult. So pray for them while they're apart, that God keeps them connected. My wife, Dana, and I will tell you that we grow closer to each other as a couple during the year we were apart because God allowed us to communicate in very meaningful, feelings-based ways. Go ahead and ask her that. Don't take my opinion for it. We grew closer then. That's my opinion. So God can connect families with 8,000 miles apart. He certainly can. Pray for them when they come back home, that they reintegrate well with their families. And pray for them when they have to go again, that they can bear through that by depending on Christ. So I would covet your prayers for our military members. And for those we work for, you've already prayed for. Our executive department, our congressional leaders, our citizens. That's who we serve. And that's who we've been praying for all day. Thank you for sharing in this church service with me and giving me a chance to share in it with you. God bless you, and God bless America.